Welcome to Self-Critic Reviews, and today Self-Critic is gonna review Quentin Tarantino's brand new movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Usually I would try to support my reviews with visuals from the source to help you understand what I'm talking about. But since I saw the film in the theater, I won't be able to do it. And throughout the entire video, you'll just be looking at my stupid face. So if you want to, you can just listen to the audio. You won't really lose out on anything. Spoilers ahead.
These are Self-Critic reviews on television and news. If this ain't your favorite artist, well, you're not getting amused. This is Self-Critic reviews.
If this gonna get different clues, or when if it's on YouTube, yeah, he is getting no views.
If you want some unbiased opinions, an analytic mind is worth billions. Yet he has been hiding his brilliance underneath this stifling diffidence. And if you don't like his opinions, go look for like-minded civilians to whine in the comment section and slap a dislike on his videos.
I went to the movie blind, without knowing anything ahead of time, aside from the fact that it was about life of actors in Hollywood. Nothing I wouldn't already know from the title. And as I expected, I enjoyed the movie. It didn't really disappoint or pleasantly surprise me. It's a solid Tarantino work. The cast was packed. I recognized a lot of big-time and small-time actors from other movies and TV shows. Tarantino didn't shy away from using relatively big names for small roles. So, as a result, the acting was fantastic, from just about every single actor. Leo DiCaprio was probably the best, because he had the least flat character in the show. Rick Dalton, the character he played, was a shy, low in confidence stutterer in the life outside of acting. But when he acted, he became a different person, and this juxtaposition was illustrated masterfully by DiCaprio. Hence, I thought that the acting scenes, in the saloon or outside, were some of the highlights of the movie for me. Rick Dalton breaking character, when he messed up his lines, was quite amazing. Following it up was the scene when Dalton was angry at himself in the trailer, talking to himself like, "You're pathetic, you're embarrassed yourself, couldn't even remember your lines, and so forth." That was a phenomenal scene, which I must say that I personally really resonate with. Being angry at myself isn't anything new to me. So seeing this anger so accurately portrayed in a movie was like looking myself in the mirror. So this was really impressive. The scene with Bruce Lee and Brad Pitt's character, Cliff Booth, was another highlight. Really funny, well acted, well filmed, and well presented. And actually, the humor in general was in the spirit of Tarantino's works. Very dry and very funny. The dialogue is usually one of the strongest aspects of Tarantino movies, but not in this one. It was below his standards, especially after the Hateful Eight masterpiece, but it was still solid and competent. The scenery, the setting, the colors were all great, so there's not much to say about that. Now, let's move on to what I didn't like about the motion picture. The directing overall, it was strong, but during some of the longer one-camera scenes, there were subtle edits I thought looked awkward. This is where illustrating an example would have helped, but alright. So, do you see how, at this moment, I'm editing myself using different takes and splicing them one after another, and it looks really unprofessional, right? So, one way to improve this is to use different camera angles for the same scenes. For example, you can zoom in for a couple of seconds, which is not necessarily the same camera angle, but you get the idea. And then go back to the same camera angle you used previously. So basically some of those scenes used the splicing technique I showed initially. And yeah, it happened once per scene and very quickly. And you probably wouldn't notice it if you weren't looking for it. But if you notice it, you notice it. Either way, that's a small gripe, inconsequential. A more important issue was the story, its entire intention. First off, Brad Pitt's character. He was a good comic relief and had some truly badass moments and was enjoyable to watch. But the way he was written into the story felt lazy to me. I understand the story's concept is to show life in Hollywood, and that's fine. But let me retell the plot in a few words before I get to my point. DiCaprio's character was offered a lead role in a movie where his stunt double, Brad Pitt, couldn't participate. So while DiCaprio was filming the movie, Brad Pitt met some hippies at a place he used to work at. And Brad Pitt's character pissed those hippies off. And several years later, those hippies came to DiCaprio's house to kill everybody as a revenge for what Brad Pitt did to them. And this culminated in the final massacre scene. So essentially, logic aside, Brad Pitt's contribution to the story is serving as a bridge to make random hippies provoke the massacre at Rick Dalton's house. Because you see, Aside from being Rick's stunt double, Cliff was Rick's best friend. And he was one of those unconditional, convenient best friends who just do whatever the writers want him to do. I mean, Cliff got away with murdering his wife, but in spite of that, he does and accepts whatever Rick wants, because it's convenient to the writers. Tarantino wanted him to piss off those hippies. And that's what happened. And to find those hippies, the only thing that had to occur was for Cliff to see the same girl 3 different times while he was driving a car. Because yeah, Los Angeles is a small town where you can easily meet the same attractive girl checking you out while you're driving a car in the span of 2 to 3 days. Happens all the time. And on the 3rd time he picked her up, and what do you know? She lived at a place where Cliff's old boss used to live. I don't mind coincidences, but when they're used so frequently to move the story forward, especially in a limited story, they stand out like a sore thumb for their cheapness. If you saw the movie, you can probably guess what my next problem is. If I had a problem with Brad Pitt's character, what do you think I thought about Sharon Tate's involvement in the story? Yeah, that's right. I don't even need to say anything. Look, when she watched her own movie in the theater, I wasn't even sure she was who she said she was, because the actors didn't even look the same, so I was confused. That's how important she was to the story. During the entire movie, I was thinking, how is Sharon even connected to the story at all? And as the movie was approaching its end, I was waiting for some kind of reunion, and voila! Sharon invited Rick to her house. The end. I'm sorry. What? Okay, let me tell you that I understand that this was the intention. In the beginning of the movie, Rick realized that Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate were his neighbors, in spite of them never meeting each other. And this was supposed to be some kind of build-up for the unconventional introduction. And also I realized that the massacre in real life actually happened to Sharon Tate, not to Rick Dalton. So her presence serves to allude to that event too. But as a person who's not heard of the Charles Manson story prior to watching the movie, her presence made no sense in the context of the film. In fact, so did the brief scene with Charles Manson. I didn't understand how it was connected to the story. Now, I understand that it's an illusion or an Easter egg. But in my opinion, that's a very poor usage of the technique. That's not how Easter eggs are supposed to work. They aren't supposed to look noticeably pointless if you don't know that the hippies are related to Charles Manson, apparently. Bizarre decision by Tarantino. The final massacre scene, by the way, was filmed beautifully. Funny, terrifying, and satisfying at the same time. The usage of the flamethrower was especially cool. I guess that's it. Thanks for watching.